Hello, I'm Dan Olds with Gabriel Consulting Group, and our webcast today is going to talk about the brand new, fresh off the presses top 500 list. And there is a lot of news in this list. First of all, there's a brand new entry at the top spot, at the #1 biggest, fastest supercomputer in the world, and it's from an unexpected party. It's from Fujitsu with their K computer. It doesn't just barely win #1. It doesn't win #1 by, just some reasonable margin. It is 3 times bigger than the current #1 system, and it comes in at 8.16 petaflops, which is unexpected. No one saw this coming for at least a year. It's early, it's big, it's also different. It's not using GPUs, not using Intel chips, not using AMD processors. It's using Spark cores, and 548,000 of them. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the list in general. We're going to talk about a lot of things HPC related. What follows is a conversation with myself, Rich Brueckner from insideHPC, and we managed to corral Dr. Hans Meuer and Jack Dongarra from the top 500 list. They're the co-founders, and they work on this, and they've just put this together. We managed to get a few minutes with them, and we're going to talk to them about the list, and we're going to talk to them about these results and get their feel for it. So it's very interesting stuff, and even entertaining in places. So stay tuned and strap in. Hi, and welcome. I'm Dan Olds with Gabriel Consulting Group, also joined by Rich Brueckner with insideHPC, and we're going to be talking about the June 2011 Top 500 list, preview and discussion of what the biggest and baddest in supercomputing is. And here on slide 2, it's a picture of myself and Rich. He's the one in the hat. I don't wear hats myself. The red hat's become a trademark of his. And our guests today are Dr. Hans Meuer, and he is the co-founder of the Top 500 project and Professor Emeritus of Computer Science, University of Mannheim, which is not all that far from where they are today in Hamburg. Also Dr. Jack Dongarra, who's the Distinguished Professor of Computer Science at University of Tennessee, also a founder of the Top 500 project. And I believe, Doctor, since you're a Turing Fellow, that proves that you're human?
That's right.
Is that proof?
That's proof, yeah. Living proof.
So you have passed the Turing test.
There you go, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, you guys are all in the same room in Hamburg, and I'm here in Beaverton, Oregon, so I'm going to count on you to ensure. I'm going to, I guess, take your guys' vouching for him being human.
He's breathing.
Okay, good. Check. Well, let's move on then, and just a little bit of background on the top 500 list. We're going to talk to the co-founders here about it, but just a little bit of background for the listeners. It began in 1993 as a list of the world's top 500 fastest computers, and it's been updated every 6 months since then. You can find it on the web, and by the way, they've got a great analytics front end on the top 500. You can sort it, you can slice it, you can dice it about any way you would want to. And it's the brainchild of two of our people on the other end of the line, Dr. Hans Meuer, Dr. Dongarra, and also Eric Strohmeyer, who's not on the phone, or is not on the web right now. But let's get to the next slide, Rich, slide 4, and let's talk through some of the questions. How did this whole thing start?
Yeah, it started in 1993, and the idea behind was that there was no vehicle in the world to view at the HPC market, and we had the feeling that with such a tool like the Top 500, based on the yardstick Linpack, of course, and there is some criticism, of course, about that. We said this is a tool which will be helpful for the HPC community, for the manufacturers, on the other hand, for the people running such computers and the scientists doing their applications. And after now 18 years, we have the feeling that it is the only a tool in the world where you can view at the HPC market. So if I visit a presentation at SC in the United States, in all these presentations, I can see slides about the top 500. Everybody is referring to the top 500. Andy von Bechtolzheim and others, and they say there is nothing now tool available but the top 500. And so, of course, it is a tool which has its quality, especially if you look at performance predictions. So when we started, we had the first 1,000 threshold. That was the Intel ASCII Red. That was in '97. He made the 1 teraflops threshold. 11 years later, it was Roadrunner 2008, and so we predict that in 2019 we will have the exaflops, the first exaflops supercomputer. But of course, everything has to be viewed via this application. The yardstick is LINPACK, and we only can make our statements with respect to the LINPACK performance. We cannot say it is the best computer in other applications, but in LINPACK. And
sure.
There is, of course, some criticism.
Yeah. I mean, Dan, this is Rich. Just to put this in perspective, when Hans and Jack created this list, I was working at Cray Research on something called the Gigaflop Awards. And we could only find a half dozen scientists that were doing sustained applications at 1 gigaflop at this time. Yeah. So that's how far it's come.
And the thing is, you're absolutely right. The top 500 has become the first, the last, and really the only list like this for HPC. And actually, this doesn't exist in commercial computing either, really. Not something that nails down performance like this and has had the same methodology over time. Now, is it hard to get the information?
It's not terribly hard. The vendors are quite happy and would like to be well represented on this list. So they provide us with the information and would like to make sure that we have an accurate list. Now, having said that, there are some companies that prefer not to be on the list. They would rather be anonymous in terms of their identity. They don't want to disclose that they're using high-performance computing, perhaps, for whatever reason internally. And in many cases, we remove the name of the individual site and just list them by their area and
seismic or something.
Seismic, that's right, or financial or other areas where these machines are deployed. And just to go a little bit beyond that, I'm sure there are machines which are in classified or secure facilities that are not reported to us for perhaps obvious reasons.
Yeah, and I can give you another example. For in Japan, we know an automotive manufacturer, and they were running a Fujitsu machine, but Fujitsu was not allowed to report this site to us. And of course, we had to respect that.
Yes.
That is very often happens. That in our field, Jack, in the academic field, in the research institutions field, it is not a problem. We are proud if we are listed but there are maybe the competitors are playing a role, but we don't know. There are different reasons why customers do not like to be listed there under their name.
Yeah, I would think competitive advantage. Like I know there's some petroleum companies, for instance, that they just don't want anyone to know how much they got, Dan.
And Wall Street too.
Yeah,
I mean financial services. This is. I mean, these are the weapons in their war.
Yeah.
Well, what trends are you seeing?
If you look at Fujitsu now, making or catching the #1 spot, they did not well in the last 15 years or so.
Yes.
But they did very well with their so-called numerical wind tunnel. This guy at a National Aeronautical Lab in Japan catched the #1 position in our second list in November 93 and had this position for 5 consecutive lists till November 95.
Yeah.
And then Fujitsu did not so good job, but 15 years later now they are back again. So this is very interesting. And the Japanese, as you of course know, also had another exciting system. This was the numerical, the Earth simulator
Yes.
in Yokohama. This was a neck machine, not a Fujitsu machine, but
Right.
a neck machine. And the designer of this machine is with us here, Watanabe-san, Dr. Tadashi Watanabe. And this system came up in 2002 in June, the #1. It was even more impressive as the K computer at this time. And I remember that Jack was interviewed by the New York Times at this time. And in this interview, Jack said, "We have a Computnik at hand."
The Sputnik moment.
Computnik, this was with respect to the Sputnik, he said, "We have a Computnik at hand." And this was even more powerful. It was the sum of the next 15 machines or so.
Like that. It was a very powerful machine.
It was very, very powerful.
But just to go to this point about the exponential, the Earth simulator, which was so powerful back in 2002, is no longer on the list. That is to say,
that is
the machine at the bottom of the list today, the machine at position number 500, is now faster than the Earth simulator was in 2002.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
And this is just
that is incredible.
Half years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and let me just make another point about the K machine. It's a very impressive machine, as we've been discussing. But it was almost, the whole project was almost canceled last year. That is, the Japanese were questioning why they were putting so much money into this computing effort. And the government actually had canceled the project. And it was only by a number of leading scientists in Japan coming to the support of the deployment and the spending of the funds, government funds, was the project resurrected. So it was really brought back from the ashes in some sense.
Amazing.
It's interesting too because supercomputing is being seen through a nationalistic lens with more nations than ever trying to add to their supercomputing within their borders.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that that they would question it at this time, particularly when when the Japanese made such a splash on the list so many times.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe we should talk a little bit about this Fujitsu.
Absolutely. Let's do.
Yeah. So what was the number? Where did they come out at?
So the exact number that they achieved?
Yeah.
So what was the number? It was they got 8.162 petaflops.
Now their final result they measured. Yes.
Right, and that was achieved on over 500,000 cores.
Yeah.
It was actually 548,352 cores on that machine.
And they do not. That's also important. They do not use accelerators like GPUs, as the Tianyi 1A system, the #1 in November last year, is using. They don't use that, and they have an extremely high efficiency. If you divide R max by R peak, the performance never will be exceeded, guaranteed by the manufacturer. They have 93%. That is unbelievable.
It's very impressive.
It's very, very impressive.
So just to put the top 3 machines in perspective, the K machine is at 8.16. The Chinese machine, the Tianyi 1A, is at 2.57. And the Oak Ridge machine, the U.S. machine,
the Jaguar
is at 1.75. So again, you see that big gap between number 1 and 2 on that scale.
Yeah, that's true.
So the K computer is roughly what, 5 times faster than Jaguar or something? Whatever that multiplier is.
Right.
Yeah.
I have to get my calculator.
So another Computnik then.
Another Computnik, that's right. It really is a Sputnik moment here.
Yeah, and oddly enough, Dan, this is not a traditional architect. This is Spark chips.
Yeah, it is Spark chips.
It's Spark chips.
Well, the architecture, the instruction set is a Spark instruction set.
Yeah.
And also what we should mention is the following.
That's another shock too. Hold on. I'm processing that last shock.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so
Is it a Spark chip or a Spark instruction set?
well, Spark Fujitsu purchased the rights to use the Spark instruction set. Fujitsu has implemented. That is, they produced the chip which does the Spark instruction set.
Already for a long time they are using Spark.
Yeah. Yes.
But what is also interesting is the following. To come up with a result of 8.162 petaflops, the system had to solve a set of more than 10 million linear equations and had to work up to 28 hours.
28 hours.
And so there is an important point because I know at the very beginning Gray said if you are using RMax, best Linpack, you can do it, take RP. But the critical point is that the system has to be up 28 hours, and that's not obvious. We know that.
Yeah. So I think that's a good point, Dan. As these machines get bigger, it actually takes them longer to run the full Linpack job, correct? Yeah. So like a machine at the bottom of the top 500, what, maybe 6 hours, something like that? What, less? But what's happening? Oh.
So that's an important point, is that the machine was able to stay alive for 28 hours. So understand, this is a machine, this is an enormous machine.
Yeah.
And this is a machine which is really state-of-the-art. It's just coming alive, basically. And they're running a program that's going to run on this computer, and it has to run non-stop for 28 hours.
That is unbelievable long.
Yes,
unbelievable long.
Yeah.
And this is the difference between take R peak or take R max.
Yes.
So the machine has a number of interesting characteristics. As we said, it's built on this Spark chip. The chip has 8 cores. The chip runs at 2 gigahertz, which is sort of modest by today's standard. There's nothing. The execution rate has not been accelerated. It's 2 gigahertz. One chip is 128 gigaflops. That's the theoretical peak performance of that one 8-core Spark chip. The chip is, one way to think of this machine is it's a 10 megawatts, roughly 10 megawatts.
Yeah, 10 megawatt.
For the complete machine. So this is, again, enormous machine. This is the most power of any machine on the list. And having said that, it's one of the most efficient machines.
It is one of the most efficient. It has, I guess, 825.
Oops, we just lost it.
Dan, you there?
Yeah, the Skype session closed.
Sorry, guys.
It has 825 megaflops per watt.
That's it, yes. Which is number 3, I guess.
Yeah, which is number 3. So the power consumption is the highest in the list. Jack is right, it is up to a bit less than 10 megawatt, but on the other hand, it's one of the most efficient ones with respect to energy. Arthur Crick doesn't admit, he doesn't get it now.
Well,
You're recording. So
I'm still recording, so
you lost your.
The whole.
This is an important.
Just
point.
keep it. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, so that's an interesting case, and the machine is really Fujitsu. It's totally Fujitsu. That is to say, the chips are made by Fujitsu, and the interconnect is made by Fujitsu. Yeah. It's a pure Fujitsu design.
Yeah.
Okay, it was the hotel kicked me off. The internet. That's what happened.
And what is also impressive for me is that NEC left the project. And left Fujitsu alone. I never believed that they can do it.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
They did it.
Okay.
So Dan, the recorder kept running there, and we let Hans finish his thought.
That's fine. And actually, you shocked me off the line.
Yeah.
Well, the Radisson kicked me off the internet, so we'll edit that together. But
let us
fix
make the following point. It has an energy consumption, the K computer in this configuration of a bit less than 10 megawatt. Okay.
Okay.
And this is the highest number in the whole.
yeah.
Just a moment.
Okay. That's
That's
a lot of energy.
Okay. You have got it with the energy. The energy consumption is a bit less than 10 megawatt. The highest number in the whole top 500 list.
The most power of any computer ever on the top 500.
Yeah. But it is one of the most efficient ones due to the high number, of course. It has 825 megaflops per watt. So this is a very efficient one.
Yeah. Incredible. So was anybody expecting this? Were you guys thinking that Fujitsu would even submit anything?
No, not this
list?
time.
Not this time.
This time, next time.
Next time maybe, but not this time.
Not this
Next
time.
year, it is 1 year earlier than we, the so-called experts, were expecting. Yeah.
So Dan, the story isn't over yet. Before we turned on the machine here, I asked if there was any headroom on this system, and Jack said there's something like there's more racks to come.
There's more racks to come. I think they're projecting 800 racks, and this machine has 600 and change racks. I forgot the exact number, but it still has some room to go. The exact core count should be for the completed machine 640,000, and as we said, this one here has a little over 500,000 for the run that they made to achieve this rate of execution.
Yeah. So
the interesting comparison will come when the Blue Waters computer is up and running sometime either at the end of this year or next year.
Yes.
Because that machine has has very similar characteristics to it. They have an IBM processor. The processor is a conventional processor similar to the Fujitsu processor. It has an interconnect that's IBM designed, not the same, but again designed solely designed for this purpose.
Yes.
And it's expected to have a 10 petaflop peak performance, and we'll see how closely it comes to gaining 93% efficiency.
Okay, well, now that was the end of the time that we had with Jack and Hans, and it was great, far-ranging. They talked about a lot of details. But I'm going to go into a wrap-up now with Rich Brueckner. Rich, are you out there?
Oh, yeah.
And myself, taking a look at this slide. Very interesting. This interesting thing about this slide, Rich, is that the K computer coming in at 8.1 petaflops. The slide doesn't convey that this is 8 times larger than the IBM Roadrunner, which was the first petaflop system, just over 1 petaflop back in 2008, 2009.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. You got these logarithmic scales, right? And you see Tianhe, right, which came out at #1 in November, and really surprised the world with 2.5-ish, right? Petaflops of sustained performance on this LinPack. Well, this thing comes in out of nowhere, a year ahead of time, at 8.1. Yeah. 8.162 petaflops on something no one was expecting to see until 2012. So,
The other interesting part of this, these are slides from Hans and Jack, and the sum slide is the summation of all of the petaflops for each edition of the list. So if you add it up, number 1 through 500, right now, the total capacity is 58.19 petaflops. The Fujitsu system alone is 14% of that.
A machine that didn't exist in anyone's mind, 24 hours ago. Yeah.
One that was flying under the radar 24 hours ago. Now,
Certainly.
the other line on here is
Yeah.
the 500th. Looks like it's the 500th system, and that's moved from, zero point 0.4 gigaflops in '94 to
Yes.
40 teraflops
Yes. Yeah. And a pretty linear line out of all of those as well.
Oh, and by the way, an interesting side note here, the Tianyi system, that's the National University of Defense Technology in China, they're sending over a team for the student cluster competition.
Oh, they are. That's
They
a
are.
first. That's a first, isn't it?
It is, and that's going to be interesting. I'm going to be doing some articles on who the teams are, but that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Well, let's take a look on the next slide. A little bit more detail around this system. Again, 8.16 petaflops. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Completely unexpected. It's 3 times larger. It's larger than the next 5 systems on the list combined.
Yes, and to put this in perspective, Dan, I mean, talking to some people, the Chinese fully expected Tianyi to stay at number 1 on this list from last November. They didn't see anybody coming up behind them that could match that, and they got shown up.
So they figured they had at least another year to run.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everyone knew Blue Waters was coming and these other systems, right? But not for this list.
And I was expecting, and I think this came out in the conversation with those guys, that there'd be a healthy GPU component or some accelerator component, FPGA, something to get to this level, and it's not.
It's not. It's not. In fact, this system has a very interesting architecture. The Spark was always known for doing really good bandwidth, right? I mean, that was one of its strengths. And what this system has, Dan, is a proprietary interconnect. This is a torus, a 6-way torus interconnect. Very innovative. It's a one-off. Incredibly expensive to develop. But you see it, the results of that in the efficiency. This machine is 93% efficient. So if you divide the possible peak performance it could have on paper versus what it delivered on LinPack, you got 93% of that delivered.
And that has got to be at or the top in terms of efficiency, right? On the list.
Very close, if not at the very top, yeah.
Well, that's the thing, and that brings up an interesting point and question for you, that they've invested a lot in this interconnect. Are they going to get their money back? Does this put them back into the game in terms of being a premier supercomputer vendor?
Well, Fujitsu really dropped out of the market a number of years ago, and last time, I think in October, they made an announcement they're back. They're going to come back. And my sources tell me, Dan, that the K is not a one-off. K is an architecture that they are going to actively sell, and not just at super scale like something like this, but something that you can install in a departmental level.
And so they're going to make a play to get the volume to support that level of development, which must have been, like you said, hideously expensive.
Yes.
But being able to come out and triple the top result, the top 500, is certainly going to give them something to put on the brochures.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to note in that the people I've talked to, Dan, this isn't just an exotic architecture with go figure out how to make it go fast. From what I understand, Fujitsu has spent a lot of resources on developing a very strong set of developer tools and compilers and things to make this a very attractive machine to develop on. So think about it. What you got here is Spark running Linux, which who'd have thought?
Not me. I mean,
Yeah.
and this is something they didn't see, the other experts didn't see coming either. So not being an expert, I feel okay about that. Well, the other point that they brought out is that this isn't the full Megillah yet from them. There is room for more.
Absolutely not. I think Jack brought that out. This is 600 some racks that got powered up, and I'm guessing, Dan, that they had enough of the system deployed they ran the Linpack and said, you know, we're not going to wait another year for the other 20% of these racks to come in, the 800 some racks. We're gonna go with this number, and you know, watch out, because 6 months and maybe a year from now, this is going to go up.
And you know, you hate to say anything in this industry for sure, but it's going to be tough for anybody to catch them in the next list or two, next 6 months, a year, year and a half from now.
Yes, certainly.
Not when they have room to scale more.
Certainly. I mean, there are a couple of petaflop systems in the works for 2012. Blue Waters is one, right? Yeah, but this is something this is something that's running today, right? They delivered. They brought it to town.
And I think that the other systems that are on the drawing board are estimated in the 10 petaflop area, right in there, right?
Yes, exactly.
So they get to 10 petaflops next year. If what we hear is correct on this system, they can get to 10 petaflops as soon as they get the gear together and integrate it. That's without a real architecture change or anything like that.
Certainly, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Big news.
It is,
Rich.
Very much, yeah. It's I think the eyes of the world, Dan, are going to be on Hamburg this week and ISC because of this. If you think back on what happened when the Earth simulator in Japan took over the top spot, what was that, 2003-ish, whatever it was.
Yeah, 2002 through 2004, I think.
Yeah,
they had a long run.
Yeah, they held that spot for a long time because it was such a big leap over anything else out there. That's what we're looking at here. And guess what? It's Japan again. And not surprisingly, it's the same architect that did the Earth simulator. Is the same guy. Yeah.
Well, he was from NEC then. It was NEC that did it.
Yes, and he's working for Fujitsu now. So, yeah, it's an amazing story.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, there's going to be lots more to look at, too. And let's take a look at where you can go for more information. Our next slide and last slide here.
Yes.
You can take a look at the top 500 list. It'll be published by the time you're seeing this, and analyze it, cut it, slice it, look at it from different angles. It's all there at top500.org. And Rich, you're on the ground in Hamburg now, and he's going to be doing full blog and video coverage, right?
Well, absolutely. I don't know if I got a surgical implant, but it's kind of a Borg thing I got going with the camera, and we're going to be asking.
My sources are telling me that you had a couple of those cameras surgically implanted in your head.
Well, maybe so, but we're going to be getting.
That's what the street says.
Yeah, well, I guess the point is we're going to be getting people's opinions. We got the most informed people on the planet here in Germany this week about what this means, what they think it means, where is it going, and you're right. This is huge news. This is the biggest thing to hit HPC, I think, since the 2003 Earth simulator. We haven't seen this kind of leap.
Yeah, Tianyi was big news, but not like this.
Yeah.
And the thing that's interesting is that this is an old school supercomputer.
It is. It's not accelerated like Tianyi. And what I find interesting, Dan, is so the last #1 system that kind of shocked people in November of 2010 was from Asia, and 6 months later, guess what happens again? Japan, right? And not just to give credit to those two systems. I mean, the what was the #4 system, the Tsubame, is the world's most power efficient supercomputer that Satoshi and his team has put together at the University of Tokyo. So
we're going to have to look and see.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely these guys aren't screwing around, and they're serious about supercomputing and being leaders in world technology in high performance computing, and it's going to take investment to catch up.
Is that a literal translation of some of the Chinese characters I saw on one of the websites? We're not screwing around? Or not? I'm not sure.
I can only guess, but you know, the Chinese didn't just build one system, Dan.
No.
You know, Thomas Sterling and a number of other people have gone over there, and they're building something like 8 other centers on a scale with Tianhe, and God only knows how big they're going to be. And they're building whole university campuses around them. So they have a 10-year plan. Unlike the U.S., they're very good at executing on 10-year plans, building things on that kind of scale, and fully carrying them out. And they intend to be leaders in HPC, and don't doubt for a minute that they're serious.
Interesting stuff. We'll stay there and cover it, and I'll be doing my typical writing in the HPC logs and blogs in the at the Register and also at GCG. And you can see all of Rich's stuff at insidehpc.com. And thank you very much for listening. And Rich, thanks for setting this up and getting us the news. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Dan, I really enjoyed it. And you know, thanks for calling in the middle of the night for us. I think this is a great story, and it's good fun to be here.
It is. And we truly live in interesting times.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, man.
Thanks. And thank you for listening. Goodbye.